Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Today, I'm going to be talking about the listening section of the IELTS test. So there's actually four sections of listening. There's four different specific listening tasks. Today in lecture one, we're just going to go over task one. We're going to go through an example provided courtesy of IELTS.org. I'm going to give you some tips. We're going to go through it together. I am going to pause it at times to talk about it just to practice. However, I do want to say for the real test, what will happen is you'll be given your answer sheet and your question paper and all of that. It'll play all the way through. You'll answer the questions, and then you'll be given a break, and that's kind of it, right? No one's going to pause it for the real thing, but I am going to do that today just to for the purposes of education for today. So let's go over our course plan. So pretty straightforward. Today we're going to be hearing a conversation between two people, and we're going to answer some questions about it. So that's task one. We'll cover that today. Next day we'll do task two, which is where one person's going to speak on a topic and we're going to answer questions about what they're saying. Lecture three, we'll go over task three, which is going to be a conversation to get amongst multiple people in an educational setting. And then the very last day of the listening section of our course, we're going to be going over one person speaking on an academic subject, much like a lecture, much like this one. Except perhaps the subject might not be English. It's probably going to be something else. Awesome. So there we go. I also want to mention that there's a wide range of different types of questions you might be asked in the listening section of the course. Okay, so it's not just, I should mention, like, it's not just, um, like, it's not just going to be all multiple choice or all fill in the blanks or all any one thing. It's going to be all different ones. Okay, so it's very important to note that there's going to be some different things we're going to have to do. But one thing we won't have to do for the listening section, at least not as of right now, as of 2023, we won't have to do any essay writing or even full sentence writing, right? Most of our answers are just going to be either one word or two words or maximum maybe three words. A lot of our answers will just be a certain number or something like that, right? And so it's really important to remember that because that's not what they're testing us on this time. What they want to know in this section, what they're really testing us on, is were we able to listen, right? Not physically were we able to hear, right? Because that would be a hearing test, not a listening test. But did we hear what was being said and were we able to interpret it correctly and understand what was going on in the conversation? Did we understand what we were hearing? Right, is the main point, right? That's what we mean by listening. And so if you can write, the correct two-word answer or one-word answer, that is good enough, right? That's what they're looking for. They're not looking to see if you can write good full sentences because they're already going to test you on that later on in the writing section and also the speaking section. They'll ask you to speak in full sentences, in fact, in many different types of complex and compound sentences later on, right? And so that's not really something that we're worried about here for listening. The main point here is, did we understand what we're listening to? Okay. It's also really important for our listening tasks in general to just kind of take a look at, right? Take a look at what kind of questions are being asked, right? Are we being asked about very specific things? Because if that's the case, we want to really listen for those specific things, right? For what cues we're going to have to hear before we know, okay, an answer is about to come up. We're about to listen for an answer. We're going to listen for it, hear it, write it down. We're done, right? There also can be some more general questions, right? So there's also going to be questions regarding overall what was the conversation about, what was going on, kind of thing, right? So there could be more like that as well. So it just depends, right? We have to know how to do both. We have to know how to listen for specific key details and write them down. And we also have to know how to listen for just listen in general and understand the key takeaways, the key points, the key things that that the speakers are trying to get across here, right? What is the main thing a lecturer, for example, with task four, is trying to get across, right? As opposed to just what are the little details, right? So let's move on, actually. Let's talk about what we're actually going to be doing today because I haven't even talked about it. Today, we're going to go over a specific example from IELTS.org. Okay, so please do go look there for this example. And basically, we're going to be going over, we're going to listen to a track. I'm going to pause it and give my tips. But first, I want everyone to just kind of look at what we're filling out. So it looks like it says here Packham Shipping Agency customer quotation form. Okay, so it looks like it's going to be someone who works with this shipping agency talking with a potential customer who's looking for a quote, right? Right off the bat, that's what's probably happening here. And what information do we need to listen for before we even play the track? What are we listening for? Well, it looks like the name of the customer is Jacob, and then we don't know his last name. He's going to probably tell the worker, the customer service representative, his last name. We have to listen for it and write it down. Okay. And when it comes to names or any proper noun that's not very common, it is expected that the spelling needs to be correct. And so they're probably going to ask what the spelling is, and we have to listen for the correct spelling, right? Or same with like a street name, right? Not everyone knows how to spell every single street name that there ever was in the entire world, right? So it's important that they ask how to spell it and that we listen to that and we write it down correctly, right? Now that said, in terms of spelling, they're not going to spell every word out. Something that is either a really common proper noun like Kenya, for example, they don't have to tell us how to spell Kenya, right? People in general know how to spell it correctly, right? Or same with just regular words, right? If they tell us that we have to write down the word glasses or something like that, most people do know how to spell glasses, or at least most speakers, most people who know English, at a high enough level would know how to spell that and wouldn't have to think twice about it, right? And so that's another example where they're not going to spell it out. However, names, names especially, but just many proper nouns in general, they will spell it out for us. So we've got to listen for the correct spelling and write down the correct spelling. Okay, so let's do it. We know exactly what we're listening for. We're listening for the name. We're listening for the name of the name of Jacob. We're also listening for the name of the college that Jacob attends, and we're also listening for the postal code, or in this case, it says postcode. So perhaps in Britain, they call it postcode instead of postal code, but either way, that's what we're listening for. So right off the bat, take a look at your question sheet, figure out what little details are we listening for? What are they asking us for? Because that's what matters at the end of the day, nothing else. Okay, so let's give it a listen. Aha, so there we go. The agent just asked Jacob for a few details from him, right? So we know what are those details going to be? Well, they need to know his name, they need to know the address, they need to know the postal code. So right now we know that the answers to our questions are coming, right? Just because she said, "Oh, I need some details from you, Jacob," right? So there we go. Let's listen carefully for those details. There we go. There we go. Write that down. Mkere. Awesome. Moving on. There we go. Westville College. That's our second answer. There we go. There we go. Are you there? There we go. There we go. There we go. Books, toys. There we go. Okay, so there we go. There's our last one, and the last one's the only one where they really tried to trick us to any degree, right? And now keep in mind this is just task one, and something I should have mentioned earlier: the tasks do get progressively harder. But regardless, what did we learn from this one? They actually said three different amounts, right? First, he said 1,500 pounds. Then he said 200 pounds. Then he said 1,700 pounds. So it's important to listen specifically for what they're asking. They want the total estimated value of all the contents. The 1,500 pounds was just the clothes and the books, which were the main costs. And then the 200 pounds was just the toys. So we added those up and said, okay, so the total cost of all of them is 1,700 pounds, right? And so 1,700 pounds would be the answer here, right? But a common mistake I see people make often is they would say, oh, first number I heard, 1,500 pounds. Okay, that must be the answer here. They're asking for some number of pounds from the listening exercise. Let's put that, right? However, that answer is incorrect, and it would be marked incorrect because they want to know the total estimated value, not the value of just the clothes and books, right? Whereas the 1,500, that's just the clothes and the books together. That doesn't also include the toys, right? So that's the problem. It needs to include all three. Okay, very good. All right. Well, that is that. A few more tips I'm going to give. So, in general, how it'll work when you go into the exam room, you'll go into the exam room. They're going to give you your answer sheet. They're going to give you your question sheet. They're going to give you some time to transfer your answers as well. They're going to give some breaks in there as well. But what's going to happen essentially is they're going to play the clip and you're going to write down your answers. So, one thing that's kind of hard to do, but I strongly suggest doing is let's say you miss an answer. You're like, "Oh shoot, I missed that." Sometimes people, keep trying to think like, "Oh, what was it? Oh, what was it?" And, if doing that for a couple seconds is going to cause you to get the answer, have at it. But don't worry too much about any answers you missed or that you're not sure of. Try to just move forward because they're only going to play the clip once. And so, meanwhile, when you're worrying about answers you missed, you're missing new answers for future questions that are important as well. So let's say, for example, let's go back to here. Let's say I completely missed the postal code. And I'm like, oh, shoot, they said the postal code. I missed it. Don't worry about that if you missed it. If you missed it and it's gone, just move on because right after they say they're telling you the size of the container, right? So we want to focus on that now. Forget about what was missed because unfortunately, what's missed is missed, right? You can't really go back, unfortunately. And they only play it for you once, okay? So if you miss an answer, don't worry about it, just move on. Now, do practice as much as possible so that you probably won't miss answers and you'll understand what they're saying. That is important too, and I highly recommend doing that. However, don't be too concerned if you're like, oh no, I missed an answer. Oh no. Well, oh well, you missed an answer. So there you go. All right. Well, that is going to be it for today. Good work today, everyone. Next day, we'll move on to lecture two, which is going to be about task two. We're going to have a monologue or one person speaking on a topic, and we're going to answer some questions about that. And this time, we're going to try to do like some other types, right? So we're going to get into for task three, 2, 3, 4 we're going to have a variety of different types of questions and different types of answers that we're going to put. All right, well, that is it. Good work, everyone, and I'll see everyone for task two. Bye, everyone.